Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Can we start? If there is no issue with the sound, please give me a thumbs up so that we can start the discussion. Okay, done. Let's start. So before the lunch break, before the bigger break, we started with the concept of employment. In employment, what we have discussed, division of the population into three groups, right? Then how do we use the population to find out who is employed, who is unemployed, unemployment rate, right? Worker population ratio, etc., and types of unemployment. Let me move on from there. Let's have a discussion regarding certain issues in India, specifically focus on India. First one is the idea of jobless growth in India. The issue of jobless growth in India. Now, what do you mean by jobless growth? Let me start with that. Whenever there is a GDP growth in the economy, follow this. Whenever there is a GDP growth in the economy, can I say that employment should also be generated? All of you will agree? Just participate. Just participate. Once you understand, it's done. Whenever there is a growth in the economy, growth means what? The production of goods and services increases. When the production of goods and services increases, the number of people who are employed should also increase. Now I'll use a term here, employment growth rate. Employment growth rate. What do you mean by employment growth rate? Or else you can simply say employment rate. With GDP growth rate, there should also be employment rate rise in the country. I repeat, with the rise in the GDP, the employment rate should also be increasing. For example, in 1 year, imagine the GDP will increase by 5%. Don't you think employment should also increase, let's say by 3% or 4%, by 5%, etc. But what if I say on one side, GDP growth rate is, let's say 7%. On one side, the GDP growth rate is 7%. But employment growth rate is 1%. Employment growth rate is 1.2%. So have a look at this very carefully. On one side, GDP is growing at a very good pace, 7%, 8%, 6.9%, etc. GDP is growing at a very good pace. But on the other hand, the employment rate, the number of jobs which are getting created, these are increasing at a very, very slow pace. Employment is not increasing at a very fast pace. It is increasing at a very, very slow phase. This situation in the economy, I repeat, this situation in the economy, it is referred to as a jobless growth situation. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. This situation in the economy, what is the situation? GDP is growing at a very good phase. GDP is growing at a good growth rate. But on the other hand, the employment growth rate is not moving at a very good pace. Number of jobs are getting created. It's not that there are absolutely no jobs. Jobs are getting created, but new jobs are increasing at 1%. New jobs are getting generated at 1.2%, 1.3%, 1.4%. So on one side, the GDP is increasing at a very good pace, at a high growth rate, but the employment rate is very, very small. This situation is called as a jobless growth situation. This is referred to as a jobless growth situation. And India, remember this, in case of India, post 2000, there is an argument that there is a jobless growth. Is it okay? Post 2000, there is an argument that there is a jobless growth in India. Why? Why do we say that there is a jobless growth? These are the reasons. Let's go one by one. First one, lower employment elasticity. The first one is low employment elasticity. Now, what do you mean by employment elasticity here? This is the formula. Please have a look at the formula. Employment elasticity is a ratio of the change in the employment rate divided by the change in the growth rate or change in the GDP. Is it okay? right? What is employment elasticity? It is the ratio of change, that is the rate of growth in the employment divided by rate of growth in the GDP. That is, if the GDP increases from 100 to 120, the number of jobs have they increased, let's say from 10 to 11. Here the growth in the employment is 10%. Here the growth in the GDP is 20%. So when you compare, when you basically substitute all of it, what you get is employment elasticity. Any problem in understanding employment elasticity here? Simple. How effective, if the GDP is happening, how effective, how productive is the growth in terms of creation of jobs? Because the argument is, if the GDP increases, simple, if the GDP increases, should the number of people working in the country increase or not? Let me know. If the GDP increases, should the number of people who are working in the country increase or not? So when the GDP increases, I'll call this as a growth rate. So how productive is the growth in the country in terms of creation of jobs? That measurement is called as employment elasticity. That is referred to as employment elasticity. Now, is it okay if I say employment elasticity should be higher? Let me know if you disagree. Is it okay if I say higher the employment elasticity? It simply means it is good for the country. It is good for the economy because more and more jobs are getting created. Right? That is basically the concept of employment elasticity. Now, what has happened in the context of India? What is happening? Have a look at this. In the context of India, the employment elasticity has actually taken a hit. Rather than increasing, employment elasticity actually has decreased in India. For example, in 1990s, employment elasticity was almost 0.4 in India. I repeat, employment elasticity was 0.4. What does it mean? If GDP changes by 1%, if GDP changes by 1%, employment will change by 0.4%. Any difficulty, please do let me know. If the GDP changes by 1%, employment will change by 0.4%. Whereas, as per the latest data, the employment elasticity in the context of India has actually fallen down. It is not 0.4 anymore. It has almost become half of it, somewhere around 0.2. Meaning, if you want to create the same number of jobs earlier, if you wanted to create the same number of jobs earlier, now the GDP has to increase by a very large margin. Is the CSAT concept okay with all of you? If you want to create the same number of jobs that you created in 1990s, now the GDP has to increase by a very, very large number so that we can create the same number of jobs. Now, some of you are saying that, sir, the vice versa can also happen. That is, what if employment elasticity is higher because the GDP will fall? Imagine the GDP will fall. Two of you are saying, sir, what if GDP will fall? Employment elasticity will be higher. Is that good for the country? But my dear, please do not apply only CSAT concept here. Along with the CSAT, apply economics as well. Do not apply only CSAT. And don't say, sir, if the denominator goes down, the outcome will increase. Do you say it is good? No, it is not good. You're missing a point here. What is the point? You tell me if the denominator falls, right? Like you're saying, if the denominator falls, do you think the numerator will remain the same? In what world? In what way? What is the justification for it? If the denominator falls, don't you think the numerator automatically will start falling? That's a precise reason. I hope you understand. Don't say, sir, if the GDP will fall, employment elasticity will rise up. Is it good? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. But in the economy, what will happen is, in the context of a drop in the GDP or a contraction in the GDP, employment will not rise. Employment will also fall. That is generally what you observe in the country. So this is called as a employment elasticity. Employment elasticity has come down. And is it okay? Is there anybody who is going to contradict me when I say that India has achieved a good GDP growth rate in the last 2 decades? Don't worry about pandemic. It's a basic blip. Right? It is one of an event. Right? But post 2000, have we achieved good growth rates? Of course, yes. 5%, 6%, 7%. So the fact is, GDP growth rate has been good. But I told you employment elasticity has come down in the last 2.5 decades. What is your inference? Think of it. Now apply CSAT concept. I am writing employment elasticity is equal to employment rate divided by GDP growth rate. If I am saying that GDP growth rate has been good, but employment elasticity has come down, what is the meaning of it? It simply means there has been a problem with this. There has been a problem with employment growth rate. Now, is it okay if I say you are achieving good growth rate, but not the rate or the employment growth rate has been very, very low? Can I call this as a jobless growth? Can I call this as a jobless growth? Why the employment is not increasing at a faster pace? We'll understand it. Let's go one by one. But GDP, very good rate. Employment, not so much. Very, very slow rate. Right? That is basically, right, the idea of a jobless growth phenomenon. Now, what are the reasons? Let's understand one by one. I'll tell you all the reasons. Don't worry. What are the reasons? One, the skilled labor availability is very low in India. Skilled labor availability is very, very low in India, right? What do you mean by skilled labor availability? I'll give a very simple example. Let me know. If you want to be hired as a software engineer, is it okay if I say you should know how to operate a computer? You should know how to write a code. Any problem with this? Please do let me know. Right? I'll come back to this. Don't worry. If you want to be hired as a software engineer, you should know how to operate a computer. You should also know how to write a code. Can I call this as a skill? Is the logic okay? Can I call this as a skill? Right now, the problem in case of India is the population, that is labor force, only a small part of it is actually skilled. A large population, which is part of the labor force, doesn't have appropriate skill sets. Now, labor force is very large. Everybody wants to work. Everybody wants to offer their services so that they can earn the salary. But what if they do not have the appropriate skilling? What if they do not possess the right skill set? Do you think the companies will hire them? Of course, no. Companies will not hire them. So one of the issues in case of India has been labor issue, that is skilling. Have a look at this. Right, as per the economic survey, out of the total labor force in case of India, only around 2.4%, between 15 to 59 years have received formal skilling, formal training. And there are another 9%, that is 8.9, I'm just rounding it off. There is another 9% of the workforce which has got the skilling, but in different methods. In all the other different ways, they have got the skilling. Sir, how do you say another 9% has received skills from another sources? On the job training. How many of you heard of this? On the job training. What do you mean by on the job training? You are hired and now you are trained. You may not have the skill set. You are hired, now you are trained. That is on the job training. And there are certain skill sets which will come with the family, right? With family means, imagine my parents are there in a particular industry. Looking at them, looking at their work, I will basically acquire the skill set. Right? So argument is simple here. You want the population which is skilled so that you can absorb them, provide them with a job. But the biggest problem in case of India is the population which is actually having skill set, the population is very, very small. Right? Second point here itself, have a look at the data here. As per one more survey, in other countries, if you look at it, the workforce which is actually skilled, it's very, very high. For example, in case of China, 24% of the workforce has skill set, 52% in USA, 68% in UK, 75% in Germany, 80% in Japan, 96% in South Korea. That is, out of the total workforce, a large population is actually skilled. So the argument is simple here. You are saying, has India experienced jobless growth? Answer is yes. We already have a data to prove it. That is, look at the employment elasticity. Now the question is why? Why is that we are observing a jobless growth phenomenon in India? The first reason is skilled labor availability is very low. Skilled labor availability is very, very low in India. That is the first point. Any difficulty here? Any difficulty? Sir, should I remember all of this data? Don't. Do not remember all of this data. And understand this. This is first problem related to skilling. Let me write one more point here. There is one more problem related to skilling. It is called as skill mismatch. It is referred to as a skill mismatch, or else they will also use the other term, skill gap. They will use one more term called as a skill gap. Now, what do you mean by skill gap here? Simple example, follow this carefully. You will offer a job to me, you will hire me. Okay, I will join your company. Now you will give me a particular work to do. For example, I'll give a very simple example. You will ask me to write a code in a particular language. It could be Python, it could be C, it could be C++, doesn't matter. You've asked me to use one language, write a code and give it. Now have a look at this. I will say, yes sir, I will do it, but I don't know how to operate a computer. I hope you understand. Right? I'll say, yes sir, I'll do it. I will write. I'll write in Python language. And those who are not from a software background, don't worry. UPSC will not ask you what is Python. Please don't worry. Right? Even I'm not from a software background. So argument is, I'll say I will write it on Python language, but I don't know how to operate a computer, how to operate a laptop, etc., etc., etc. So don't you think, right? You have hired me. You are giving me a job, but I do not have the skill sets that you want. I hope you understand. I do not have the skill set that you want. You will ask me, then what are your qualifications? What you know, right? What is your qualification, right? What is your work area? I will say, sir, my work area is, let's say, teaching. My specialization is teaching. So have a look at this. For teaching, I already have certain skills. Is it okay? I have certain skills. But are these the skills which are needed by you? Right? Any difficulty in understanding the idea of a skill mismatch or a skill gap? Skill gap simply refers to a situation wherein a person has a skill set, but those skill sets are not the ones which are demanded by the market, which are needed by the market. So it's not that people do not have skills. They have skills, but they are not the skills which are required by the economy. That is also a problem in case of India. That is also a problem. And you know what will happen because of lack of skilling, skill gap, etc., etc. There is one more problem in case of India, referred to as underemployment. As a result of all of this, you will come across one more problem in India, underemployment. Not unemployment, underemployment. What is the meaning of underemployment? A person is hired, person is given a job, but the qualification that the person has is much higher than what is actually required for the job. I will repeat it again. A person is hired for a job, but the qualification that the person has is much higher than what is actually required for the job. For example, right, government clerk. Now tell me, do you need an MBBS degree to become a government clerk? Simple question. Do you need to have an engineering degree or an MBBS degree to apply for a government clerical work? Of course no. But many of the times what will happen is, right, the people, because of lack of jobs in the market, because the number of jobs are very less, what they will end up doing is, these kind of graduates, they will apply for government clerk. Right, now tell me, don't you think the qualification that the candidate has is higher than whatever qualification is required for the job? Is it okay? The qualification that the candidate has is much more than what is required for the job. That is underemployment. That is underemployment, and that is also a problem. That is also a problem, right? So one is unemployment. Anyways, it's a problem. We also have a problem called as underemployment. And if you ask me, sir, why are they applying for a government clerk job? Please read the newspapers, right? Because you are not reading newspapers, you will not come to know all of it. Because the number of jobs in many of the years in India are not available. We have large number of graduates. They do not have the skill set, but they are graduates. They will end up applying for these kind of lower level jobs, right? So unemployed, underemployed. Done, right? So first issue is the skilling here, right? The problem of skilling. Now you will ask me, sir, why do people don't have the skill set? I'll come to the second problem here. Second problem is, large part of the population in India, especially rural population, large part of the population in case of India, which is working, of course, is working in the agriculture sector. It is working in the agriculture sector. Now you tell me, you want to work in agriculture sector, that is, you want to get a wage opportunity where you will plant the seed, or you have given the set of saplings like this, you are supposed to plant the saplings. What kind of skill sets you require? What kind of qualification you need to have? Do you think you require any kind of a qualification to work in agriculture field? Qualification means degrees, education levels. Do you require all of it? Of course no. So what happens is, large part of the population in case of India, right, large part, especially rural part of India, because there is no requirement of a skilling or no requirement of a qualification, and they are not interested in even learning also, what will happen is, it will get stuck up in the agriculture sector. Is it okay? It will get stuck up in the sense they want to move, but problem is they don't have a graduation. For example, imagine a person is working in the farm. If you ask him, do you want to become a software engineer? Of course, the person will say yes. They'll say, yes, I want to become an engineer. I want to earn good salary, etc., etc. But for that, don't you think they require certain qualification? I hope you understand this. They require certain qualifications. But you are talking about rural India. How many colleges are there? How many schools are there? How many people actually go to schools, have finished their schooling? How many of them drop out in between? How many of them go for higher studies, etc., etc.? So because of all of this reason, a large part of working population in India, somewhere around 49%, it is working in agriculture sector. Even though they are interested in moving away from agriculture sector, now there is a problem. That is, one, they may or may not have qualification. Second, they may not have even the skill set. So because of all of this, what will happen is, this population will get stuck up in agriculture sector. They will not be able to move out of it. And the next point related to this is, how many of you think working in agriculture sector is profitable in India? Let me check. How many of you think that working in agriculture sector in India is profitable? right? That is, you will be able to earn hundreds of crores of rupees profit, right? Lakhs of rupees worth of profit. Absolutely no. Because agriculture sector, there are so many factors which will have an influence over it. Large population, working population is involved in agriculture sector. The amount of income generated within the sector will remain always low, right? It will always remain low. Right? For example, now imagine you're a farmer who has cultivated potato. Have you read the newspaper? What has happened to prices of potato? You have cultivated onion. You tell me what has happened to the prices of onion, right? So I'm pretty sure. And don't tell me, sir, right? You did not discuss what has happened, etc. It is there in every newspaper. Every newspaper. So the farmers, right, who are working in the agriculture sector, now they will not have sufficient amount of income. So neither they have a right qualification, nor do they have, let's say, the skill set, required skill set. Third, they will not be able to earn sufficient amount of income. Now, don't you think this will contribute to high poverty numbers in India? Just think of it. I'm connecting it to one more part. Don't you think this will contribute to poverty in India? Right? That's the reason. This is a trick. Remember this. Whenever you're writing an answer, how to address poverty in India, how to eradicate poverty in India, make sure one of the point is related to agriculture sector. Simple. Make sure that one of your points is related to agriculture sector, because as long as agriculture does not provide good source of income to the population in rural part of India, you will not be able to address poverty in India. Is my point okay with all of you? I'll repeat it. As long as you do not ensure that agriculture sector will provide good returns to the farmers, you will not be able to address poverty situation in India. That is not possible. Do not try it. It will not happen. Many of you will simply suggest, in that case, sir, I will take everybody who is there in the agriculture sector, I'll shift them to manufacturing. Very good thought. Right? Very, very good thought. So why not shift everyone into manufacturing? My dear, then what will you eat? Tell me, what will you eat? Machines. Instead of onion, you'll start cutting the machines and putting them in dal, chawal, etc. Of course, no. So there is a huge requirement of agriculture sector. But please understand, as long as agriculture sector will keep on performing as the way it is doing now, you will not be able to address poverty in India. Any issue here? Any issue here? So I will import from foreign market. My dear, look at what is happening to forex reserves. Look at what is happening to forex reserves. Forex reserves very recently have fallen below $600 billion. Already alarm bells are ringing in RBI's head. Right? Forex reserves have fallen below $600 billion after a very, very long time period. RBI is already concerned. Now you want to import even food grains into India. Right? Again, not a very good recommendation. Done? Okay. So this is basically the reason. So follow the sequence here. What are we discussing? I said India experiences the issue of jobless phenomenon or jobless growth phenomenon. How do I prove it? I've taken employment elasticity to prove that. Now, why is that happening? One is skilling levels are very low in India. Skilled labor availability, very low. Even if we have a skilled labor, there's a problem with respect to skill gap. Whatever skill set they have, they are different skill set compared to, right, the demand in the market. Third one, lot of population is involved in the agriculture sector, working population, of course. Agriculture sector is neither remunerative, neither there is any guarantee about incomes, and people work in the agriculture sector because there is no requirement of a skilling, no requirement of a qualification. So the movement of the labor away from agriculture becomes very, very difficult. It is very difficult to achieve that. Okay, next issue. Investment has been capital intensive. Investment has been capital intensive. What do you mean by the term capital intensive? I'll give you examples. Focus on this. Example 1. You will invest money and purchase a lot of machines. Purchase a lot of machines. And right, to operate the machines, you will require people, employees. Example 2. You will spend money, hire lot of people, hire labor, and using the labor, you will get the output. I'll give you example also, have patience. So what is the example 1? Any real-time example? Power sector. Power sector. Example 2, textiles. Garment factory. Textiles or garment factory. Now, can you see the difference between both of these examples? Can you see the difference between both of these examples? What is the difference? In the example 1, the amount of money that you have invested on the machines is very, very high. For example, in power sector, let's say coal power plant, do you think number of people who are working, their wages, their salaries is higher than the cost of constructing coal plant? Of course no. What about steel manufacturing? The amount of money that you have spent on purchasing all these machines, it is lower than the salaries that you are going to employees? Absolutely no. So amount of investment in the capital, that is a machinery, is very, very high. Second example, you are spending money, but not on the machinery, but on the labor. On the labor. So look at this. Example 1, this is called as capital intensive. This is referred to as capital intensive. And example 2 is referred to as labor intensive. Example 2 is referred to as labor intensive. Sir, apart from garment, that is a part of textile, any other example of a labor intensive? Of course, yes, gems and jewelry. Gems and jewelry. And I'll connect it to current affairs. I'll connect it to current affairs now. Very, very recently, amount of exports which are done from India have come down. All of you will agree? Very recently, the amount of exports which are being done from India, for example, look at the January data, you will realize it. The exports which are happening from India have been affected, have started coming down. That is point number 1. Point number 1, is it a cause of concern? Of course, yes. Any time the exports will come down, it is a cause of concern. But if you dissect the data, you will realize that exports from the labor intensive sectors have started coming down. That is a bigger concern. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. Understand, this is how you connect the dots in the current affairs. Exports have come down. Problem? Of course, yes. Of course, yes, it's a problem. But within that export, when you find that it is from the labor intensive sectors such as gems and jewelry, where the exports have contracted much more, then you will realize, okay, this is much bigger problem. Why? If there is a decline in the capital intensive exports, no issues. It's a problem. But when you compare it with labor intensive exports, if they fall down, the number of people who will lose jobs would be much, much higher. The unemployment that it would cause would be much, much higher. That is a precise reason. Remember this. Very recently, exports have come down, but specifically within the exports, those which are coming from labor intensive sectors have come down. That is a cause of concern. Very, very big cause of concern. Done? Now, what is the connection here? The investment has been done in case of India, but lot of this investment has been capital intensive compared to labor intensive. So capital intensive means investment is done that contributes to GDP, but the number of jobs which are created will not be very, very high. Next one, majority of the contribution to the GDP has come from the services sector. Right? For example, I keep on telling you this. If you look at the GDP, more than 50% of the contribution comes from services sector. But the service sector feature is that compared to manufacturing, compared to agriculture sector, in case of services sector, the labor requirement is lesser. Is it okay? Again, I'm making a comparison here. Making a comparison. For example, in the agriculture sector, 49% of the workforce is there. Right? Services sector. Right? Within services also, there are various types of services where labor is actually required. But you will see that many other services or part of the services where labor requirement is very, very less, they are growing at a very, very good pace. Right? That is the reason majority of the contribution coming from the service sector, labor requirement is comparatively lower here. And the last problem, right? Last problem why there is a problem of employment in India is the labor laws. Is the problem of labor laws. What is the issue of labor laws in India? Right, let me check whether I've written anything or not. Just a second. There is a reform. I'll come back to this. Don't worry. Okay, I'll come back to this. Nothing I've written. I'll tell you. So, what is the issue of labor laws in India? Simple. In case of India, the labor as a subject will fall in the concurrent list. Now, many of you will start typing, sir, what is a concurrent list? Simple, understand this. Whenever you come across the term concurrent list, it simply means on this subject, central government is allowed to make a law. States are also allowed to make a law. Any problem regarding this? Please do let me know. Right, the center is allowed to make a law. The state is also allowed to make a law. Which means on a subject of labor, central government will introduce certain laws. States are also allowed to introduce certain laws. Now, if both are allowed, don't you think the number of laws, labor laws in India will be very, very high? Right? Is the logic okay? If both are allowed, center is also making labor laws. Every state government is also making labor laws. What will happen to number of labor laws in India? Number of labor laws will be very, very high. Now, imagine you want to invest in India. You prefer having more and more labor laws or less labor laws? Again, imagine you're a manufacturer, you are the owner, you want to invest in India. You feel a situation where more labor laws are there, it is good for you, or less labor laws are there, is good for you. Right? The answer is there should be less labor laws for a manufacturer. Again, for a manufacturer. I'm not talking about the workers, for owners of the company, because it is easier for you to implement. I hope you understand. It is very easy for you to implement, very easy to follow the labor laws. But in case of India, because of more than 100 labor laws, look at the difficulty. Because of this situation, in case of India, there are more than 100 labor laws. So you can imagine you want to invest in India, you want to manufacture in India, you will have to follow more than 100 labor laws now. That's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. Right? Because even a small mistake, they will penalize you. Right? The government will simply catch hold of you, penalize you. Right? So the argument is, because of multiple labor laws, it has made it very difficult for the manufacturers to hire people and fire people. Whenever they want to hire, whenever they want to fire, that is remove. That is not allowed. That is not allowed in case of India. You are supposed to take permission of the government if you want to do that. Right? So as a manufacturer, you want a flexibility. You want a certain flexibility so that today the production requirement is high. You will hire more people. Tomorrow the demand has crashed in the market. You will fire some of the people. But that flexibility is not there in India because labor laws do not allow it. Labor laws prohibit this kind of a hiring and firing policy. So as a manufacturer, what you will do? Rather than hiring a full-time worker, you will hire now a contract worker. Is it okay? Rather than hiring a full-time worker, now you will hire a contract worker. What is a contract worker? Simple. Understand this? Here is company. I'll take a name of the company. You don't write this in the exam. Here is, let's say, company Wipro. Here is a company Wipro. They can directly hire a software engineer. Is it okay? They will hire a software engineer. Salary will be paid by the company Wipro. This software engineer will be there in the list of employees of the company. Wipro will provide paid leaves, earned leaves concept is there. Bonus is given, right? Health insurance is provided, etc., etc., etc. But rather than doing this, what if the company Wipro will outsource the work? Will simply outsource the work to someone else. For example, freelance workers. Have you heard of freelance workers? There are many people who are basically working freelance. Freelance means they are not full-time employees of any company, right? They'll simply use a statement. I am my own boss. I'm pretty sure you've heard of this. They'll say, I am my own boss. That is, I will work whenever I want to. I will work to whomever I want to. I don't like to work today. I will not work, right? Etc. like this. Freelance work. Now, if you're a freelance worker, one, are you an employee of the company? No, absolutely no. You are not an employee of the company. Second, if you are an employee here, if you're a full-time employee, you are given good salary, that is monthly. After the end of the month, you are given salary. If you're a freelance worker, is there any guarantee of the payment after the end of the month? Do you have any kind of a guarantee? Absolutely no. If you are given the work in that month, the company will pay. Otherwise, no payment. Right? Third, if you're a full-time employee, you'll be given earned leaves. Health insurance is there. Right? XYZ benefits are there. What about a freelance worker? Right? Absolutely no benefits like this. So understand the logic here. Because of this kind of a labor law situation, which is very difficult to implement all the labor laws, if you hire a person, now you will be worried about labor laws. Rather than that, what you will do? You will simply start giving this work to contractual workers, freelance workers, so that you will not be worried about coming under or being worried about implementation of all these labor laws. Any difficulty in understanding all of this? Any difficulty? So what will happen? Full-time job generation, or the number of jobs which are full-time, will not be generated in India. So these are some of the very important causes, some of the very important issues that basically affecting the unemployment or concept of employment in India. And this is why we say that in the last 2 decades, India has been experiencing the concept of jobless growth, or the phenomenon of jobless growth. Where do unorganized workers generally come? They will come in this concept of contractual workers. Contractual, right? That is non-full-time workers, not full-time workers. Okay, done? Any difficulty here? Now, has the government of India done anything? I'll come back to this, don't worry. Has the government of India done anything? Right? Yes, of course, yes. Government of India has implemented Startup India initiative, where we want to promote employment generation. We have also implemented Make in India initiative. By the way, we have discussed both Startup and Make in India last week. I hope you understand. Right? The idea of a Startup and Make in India, we have already discussed last week. Labor laws rationalization has been done by the government, but they are yet to implement it. Sir, what do you mean by labor laws rationalization? Central government, understand this. Central government has taken around 36 labor laws, and they have basically rationalized. Rationalized means they have subsumed all of these labor laws into 4 labor codes. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. Central government has taken 36 labor laws. Rather than having 36 labor laws, all of them, whatever is required, etc., all these provisions have been put into 4 codes now. Point number 1. Should you by heart all the 4 labor codes? Don't. Do not waste your time. I'll tell you reason. All of you will agree. If anybody has a disagreement, let me know. Point number 2. These 4 labor codes already have been passed by the parliament. But I am telling you, you don't have to read it completely. Why? These are very, very technical in nature. UPSC will not test you there. Second, don't write this in the exam. How many of you think government of India will be taking and implementing these 4 labor codes now? Let me know. How many of you think that government will be pushing forward and implementing these four labor codes now for, let's say, at least the next 2 years? And if you're wondering why is sir saying like this, why is this fellow at around 4:35 talking like this like a madman? All of you know what is going to happen in 2024? Anybody has a doubt in what is going to happen in 2024? You should not have a doubt. And why that is relevant? Why is it relevant? Most of the labor unions, that is the trade unions, are opposed to these labor codes. Most of them are opposed to these labor codes, right? And because there is opposition, it is going to happen like this. Government mostly will not do anything for the next 2 years for implementation of these 4 labor codes. Why? Because right, there are a lot of compulsions for the government. Right, they are yet to take the stakeholders, that is, let's say the labor unions or the trade unions on board, have consultation with all of them, see if anything can be changed, and then try to implement these labor laws. And moreover, every state government should also be on the board. Is it okay? Every state government should also be brought on the board, because of course many of these labor codes or many of these provisions will have to be implemented by the state or the machinery at the state level. So again, the argument is simple. We have introduced rationalization. We want to reduce the number of labor laws. But we don't see that in the next couple of years, right, government of India going forward and steamrolling, or let's say implementing all of these 4 labor laws. Okay, next one. MSME reforms. MSMEs are very much relevant, right? If you remember the data, I told you this. The total number of MSMEs in case of India is how many? More than 6 crore. And how many employees are there in the MSME sector? More than 11 crore employees. The number of MSMEs are more than 6 crore. The number of employees in the MSME is more than 11 crore. In fact, if you remember the slide, if you have by-hearted it already, the last point in that slide was this. After agriculture sector, it is the MSME sector which has a huge number of employees working. And don't you think taking care of the MSME sector means, right, one, creating jobs in the MSME and protecting the existing jobs in the MSME sector. And finally, Skill India initiative. I'll come to this. Finally, the idea of a Skill India initiative. Now, what do you mean by Skill India initiative? Right? Understand this carefully. Skill India initiative was launched by the government in 2015. But before that, in 2014, Government of India set up Ministry of Entrepreneurship. Remember this. Ministry of Skilling, right? If I were to write exactly as it is given by the government, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. In 2014, Government of India set up Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Right, so that is basically the concept of MOSDE. Now, after this MOSDE was set up, Government of India launched one more initiative, Skill India Initiative. Skill India Initiative. Now, Skill India Initiative was launched in 2015. Under this, we wanted to ensure that 40 crore people will be employed. I'm sorry, skilled, not employed, skilled. 40 crore people in India would be provided with a skilling. Objective was very simple. We'll provide them with the skills, and in the market, they'll get the jobs. Right? So that was the objective of Skill India Initiative. right? And related to skilling in India, Government of India has launched multiple initiatives. I'll not be discussing all of them because by the time you write the exam, some of them will be revised, some of them will be merged, some of them will be revamped, etc. etc. Okay. 32 crore borrowers under Mudra loan and how MSMEs is only 6 crore. My dear, I don't know from where you have got this data, but I will give you the economic survey data. Number of MSMEs in India are more than 6 crore. Number of employees are more than 11 crore. That is MSME data from economic survey. And the 32 crore borrowers, right, have they taken multiple loans? Because under MSME you can take right Shishu, Kishore, Tarun, etc. Please check. Please check. I don't know from where you have got that data. What is MSME sector? This is much more interesting question. MSME stands for micro, small, medium enterprises. Micro, small, and medium enterprises. Okay. Now, one more very important initiative of Government of India to provide skilling, to provide skill sets to the people is the PMKVY, Pradhana Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Pradhana Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Now, what is this Pradhana Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana? Please have a look at the table. Have a look at the table. Under PMKVY, Pradhana Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, which was launched by the government back in the year 2015. It was launched by the government back in the year 2015. Under this, there are two components. Please have a look at this. There are two components. What are the two components? One is short-term training, and the second one is recognition of prior learning. Okay, one is short-term training, that is called as STT, and the second one is recognition of prior learning, RPL. Now, what is the training provided? What is the duration? Don't do PhD on this. Focus on the important points. What Government of India did was, under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, they basically tried to implement two components. One, imagine you already have skill set. I hope you understand. You already have skill set. Government will simply give you a certificate for it. That is called as recognition of prior learning. Now, some of you are asking, sir, how do you know that we already have the skill set? How do I acquire it? My dear, simple. I'll give an example, but again, don't take it in a derogatory meaning. Do not take it in a derogatory meaning. If let's say my parents are working in, let's say, a tannery, right? My parent is basically a person who is involved in making of, let's say, slippers. Right? Don't you think if I keep on accompanying the person, if I keep on looking at the person, working like the person, I would acquire the skill set automatically? Any difficulty here? Any difficulty? Right? Just because we are with them, don't you think we will acquire the skill sets automatically? I don't need separate training for it. I will automatically acquire it. Right? So argument is there are certain skill sets which are automatically acquired. Now government doesn't have to provide you training. You are already skilled. For them, government would simply provide a certificate that is called as a recognition of prior learning, RPL. And in addition to this, there is one more component. What is the component? You will be provided with the training and then you'll be provided with the certification. That is a short-term training, STT and RPL. And to provide the training itself, Government of India has set up various Kaushal Kendras, right? Various Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendras at district level so that the skill training would be provided to these people. Now, what has been the performance of this? The performance of this is provided here, but this is my sincere suggestion to all of you. Do not by heart it. Do not by heart it. Do not by heart it. This is not going to be asked in UPSC, at least not for you people. Because I've taken the table from this year's economic survey. Is it okay? I've taken this table from this year's economic survey. In the same way, if you're going to write the exam next year also there is an economic survey. So obviously the data would be changed. Data would be much different by the time you write the exam. But anyways, between financial year 17 and 23, right, under PMKVY 2.0, 1.1 crore people have been trained. 83% have been certified and around 21 lakh have been placed. Just to go through the data, please do not by heart anything from this. This is my suggestion. Do not by heart anything under this right side of the table, because they are giving you a lot of data. How many were trained, how many have been employed, right, how many have been certified, etc., etc. So by the time you write the exam, the data will be completely different. In addition to this, the data that is given here, I will add one more point here. Very recently, Government of India has launched PMKVY 3.0. PMKVY 3.0, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana 3.0. That is the third version of PMKVY. What have they done under PMKVY 3.0? What is the speciality about it? Please remember the data here. The PMKVY 3.0 is known for district skill commissions. District skill commissions, DSC, district skill commissions. Now, what is the importance of a district skill commission? Simple. Under the PMKVY, we are trying to have a demand-driven labor. Understand all these statements. Under PMKVY 3.0, we are trying to have a demand-driven labor in the market. Now you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by demand-driven labor? Follow the process here. There is a commission set up at every district level. Now this commission at the district level will do a survey in their district. They will conduct a survey of what kind of industries are present, what kind of labor is required, what kind of machinery operators are needed, etc., etc. And based on this study, I repeat, based on this study, now they will provide skilling to the youth here. They will provide skill sets to the youth. Can I call this methodology as demand-driven labor supply? Let me know. Can I call this methodology wherein what they have done? First, they have identified what kind of skilling is required. Then they have provided those skills to the youth. Now, what is the idea here? Idea is the people who are having certificates, the same kind of skills are actually needed by industries. So this is basically referred to as a demand-driven labor supply model. Any problem with the term, please do let me know. And it is the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana 3.0 which is actually implementing this model now. The 3.0 version of PMKVY, it is actually implementing this model. That is, rather than simply supplying the labor, now we are ascertaining, we are finding out what kind of a labor is actually demanded by the economy. And we are trying to supply the same kind of a labor. Right, so this is one important reform by the government regarding skilling in India. Please remember it. Another one is National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme, NAPS. NAPS. What is this idea of apprentice? Apprentice simply means a trainee. Is it okay? Apprentice simply means a trainee. A person who is being trained is referred to as an apprentice. Under the National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme, which was launched again in 2016, right? It was 2015 in PMKVY, NAPS 2016. Under this, 1 year training program is given. 1 year training is provided, at least 1 year. I should say like this, at least 1 year. It could be 1 to 2 years, etc. like this. At least 1 year training program is provided at various industries. Right? Argument is the industries will hire them, provide them with the training, and monthly, remember this, monthly certain amount of money is paid to them, which is called as a stipend. Is it okay? Right? Monthly certain amount of money, salary is not paid to them. They are not workers. Salary is not paid. Stipend is paid by the company. And understand this carefully. After the training period is over, because the person is trained now, generally the companies are allowed to hire them. This is the program. This is generally referred as the apprentices program. Now, why is the government promoting it? Because we need a lot of these trainees. I hope you understand. We require a lot of these trainees. Companies require a lot of these trainees. And understand the logic here. Companies will benefit because, one, they will provide the training in the skill sets that the company requires. Simple. Company will provide you with the skill in a technology which is required for the company. They will not provide you some other training. So one. Second, government says whatever stipend you pay, some part of it I will contribute. Right? Some part of it I will contribute. You don't have to pay the full amount. So that is one more benefit for the company. So government, through the concept of National Apprentices Promotion Scheme, is actually promoting hiring of a lot of these apprentices in the companies. Done? So this is how government, through its skilling initiatives or other programs, etc., is promoting the employment generation. And the final point related to this, the issue of labor, female LFPR, female labor force participation rate. Now, what has happened in the context of female labor force participation rate? As per the World Bank, please look at the data here. As per the World Bank, female labor force participation rate has actually declined from 30.27% or around 30% back in 1990 to 20% in 2019. What do you mean by this? Lot of the female workers, lot of the female who were earlier willing to work, or the proportion of the female who are earlier willing to work, has actually started declining in India, has actually started coming down in India. And World Bank says this is worrisome, or for a simple reason. In certain years where we have been able to achieve very high growth rate, in certain years where India has registered very good growth rates, the female LFPR ratio or LFPR actually has fallen down very, very fast in those years. Right? Have a look at this. For example, between 2003, 2004 to 2010 and 2011, the decline has been the steepest, very fast decline in the female LFPR. Now, some of you will ask me, sir, what is the problem if the female LFPR will fall? What is the problem? Is it not a problem when female, that is, forget about female, is it not a problem when people will stop searching for the jobs or not? Is it not a problem for the Indian economy when more and more people will simply say, as out of total population, more and more people will simply say, I don't want to work, I don't want to search for the work, I want to remain as a part of non-workers, which means the burden on a house, burden on a particular housing unit to provide for the food for all the family, full number of people, will automatically increase. Right? So that is the reason the female LFPR decline is a cause of concern. And moreover, you can connect it to society. Moreover, you can connect it to society. Don't you want more and more female to start searching for the job? Don't you want more and more female to get jobs in the economy? Because it is connected to empowerment. It is connected to empowerment in India. Right? For example, Government of India says Nari Shakti. Right? Please read the speech which was given by Prime Minister yesterday. Please read about that speech. Prime Minister says the growth that we have been able to achieve in the last couple of years, it is predominantly because of Nari Shakti. That is, a lot of female oriented or female driven startups have started in India, and they have started contributing to the growth in the economy. Right? So obviously, yes, the female LFPR should increase. The employment within the female category should also start increasing. And I'll tell you one more point. When I take up the next chapter, that is inclusive growth, I'll tell you one more point here. Right? Very, very, very bad for Indian economy. In the sense, very bad image of Indian economy. When you look at it, only small part of the income earned in the Indian economy go to female workers. I hope you understand how much, etc., etc. I'll show it later. Please don't worry. Right? So these are some of the labor issues, labor reforms, right, and the measures taken by the government. Next one, the concept of gig workers. the idea of gig work. I'm pretty sure all of you heard of gig workers, right? Sir, I've not heard of it. You must have seen. For example, have you ordered something on the Blinkit? Right? Have you ordered something on the Blinkit? Right? By the way, if you ask me, sir, what is Blinkit? It's an app. It's an app, a fast delivery service. If I've ordered something on Swiggy, ordered something on Zomato, ordered something on Amazon delivery, right? Or something in an urban clap or urban company. All these are basically the concept of gig work itself. Now, what do you mean by gig? Have a look at this. What do you mean by gig? Right? What do you mean by gig workers here? Simple. Gig workers are those which have a non-standard work arrangement with their employers. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. Gig workers are those which are having a non-standard work arrangement with their employers. What do you mean by non-standard work arrangement? Simple logic. When you are working with a company, let's say you are hired by a software company. Before you start working for the company, you will sign the agreement. All of you will agree? You will sign the agreement. What is there in the agreement? In the agreement, the details of the job are provided. For example, what is your temporary period? Temporary in the sense, initially they will say for 6 months or for 1 year, you are a temporary worker. After, let's say, 1 year, you will be given a permanent position in the company. In those 6 months, how many hours you are supposed to work? How many holidays you will get? Right? How much is your salary? Right? How much is your tax liability? Etc. 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 All of those are given in the agreement. Is it okay? All of them are given in the agreement. This is basically a standard arrangement between the employer and the employee. Is it okay? This is a basic standard arrangement between an employer and an employee. Done? Now, whenever you talk about gig work or a gig worker, they are also providing certain services to the company. But such standard agreements are not existing between the employer and the employee. The owner of the company or the person who is hiring doesn't have a work agreement, which is generally there in the other side. That kind of a standard arrangement is not present. Right? That is basically referred to as gig workers. Any problem with this? Any problem with this? Right? Basically, gig work means any type of non-standard work arrangement. Any type of non-standard work arrangement. For example, food delivery partners. It's a gig work. A software freelancer, a gig work. A contractual employee, a gig work. Right? So gig work is a very, very broad term. It's okay. It's a very, very broad term. Simply means whenever there is an employee and an employer and a standard agreement is not there. What do you mean by standard agreement? They will simply tell you in a month, these are your number of working days. On a day, you're supposed to work for 9 hours. At the end of the month, right, this is the salary that I'm going to pay, right, etc., etc., etc. Whenever such standard arrangement is not there, all of these will basically become a part of gig work. Right? So that is basically the idea of a gig work in India. And very recently, there is a lot of boom in this economy. This is called as a gig economy. Right? In this economy, there is a sudden boom that is taking place. Right? And now let's understand what is the reason. Right? Why is there a demand for this kind of a gig economy or gig workers in India? And is it good? And is there any concern? Is there any problem related to this? Let's understand it. First one, in favor of gig workers or gig work in economy. First one, it will provide a lot of flexibility for both of them. That is an employer as well as employee. Lot of flexibility is there. Sir, what do you mean by flexibility? Imagine you are the owner of the company. your owner of the company. Don't you think you will have the flexibility to remove me tomorrow if I'm a gig worker? Sir, why will I remove? Simple, because tomorrow you may not have sufficient amount of work to allocate to. Rather than having all the full-time employees and lesser work to allocate to them, don't you think it makes more sense for you to first get the work, then decide how many employees should be there to get the work done? Gig work, right? So it will provide a lot of flexibility for the employer. What about employee? If I am the employee, it will provide a lot of flexibility to me also, because I'm not bound by only one agreement. I'm not bound to only one company. I can provide my services to multiple companies like this. I can provide or I can work in multiple jobs. That is allowed, because I'm not going to work or I'm not going to be in an agreement with only one company. Okay, right? So it will provide flexibility for both employer and employee. Employee can work for multiple organizations. Allowed, of course, yes. They can work for multiple organizations. Companies do not have to hire and pay full time for the employment. That is, hidden benefits will not be there. What do you mean by hidden benefits? Insurance, bonus, paid leaves, etc. All these kind of benefits, the company doesn't have any compulsion to extend it to gig workers. They will extend all of these hidden benefits only to full-time workers. Okay, contributes to the employment growth rate, because people are getting jobs, either temporary or whatever it is, or a contractual work, freelance work, whatever it is. This is a type of a job. They are getting employment opportunity. So it will contribute to higher growth rate in the employment. Right? So these are some of the advantages of having a gig economy. But having said so, there are certain concerns. First one, employees generally are not provided with other benefits, which a full-time employee will get. These benefits are not given to the other employees or gig employees. So what is the benefit here? I'll give a very simple example. Imagine you join a company as a software engineer. Don't you think you will get promoted after a couple of years? Don't you think your salary will increase? The hidden benefits that the company is providing, don't you think the hidden benefits will also increase? Right? So as a full-time employee, you will enjoy a certain advantage over the gig workers. Right? So employees generally are provided with other benefits. Employees do not have job security. You can be removed at any point of time. Removed in the sense of, first and foremost, you are not on the payroll of the company. Payroll simply means monthly salary. If you're a full-time worker, by default, after the end of the month, salary is credited to you. But if you're a gig worker, freelance worker, they can remove you simply at any point of time, because you are not a full-time employee. Right? So employees do not have any kind of job security. What about the growth? Growth in the sense, you're a software engineer. Don't you think after 2 years you would want to become a team leader? Right? Or else, I'll take your own example. Imagine you get through civil services, you become IAS officer. Tell me, would you want to remain only as an IAS officer till your retirement age? Don't you want to become a district collector? After district collector, let's say chief secretary to the state government. After that, maybe let's say a secretary to a particular department. And if God willing, if everything works in your favor, if stars are shining in your favor, why not cabinet secretary? Why not cabinet secretary then? So it simply means there should be growth. But do you think gig employees will have growth? I understand. Do you think gig workers will experience growth? Of course no. Right? Because these are not full-time employees. Why will anybody be promoted? For example, if I'm a gig worker, the company owner will call me up and say, congrats, you are manager now. Tell me what am I managing? I hope you understand. right? The company manager will call me up and say, right, you are vice president. Vice president of what? I am an individual worker. I'm an independent worker. Vice president or manager, team leader of what? Absolutely nothing. Right? So there is no guaranteed growth in gig work. Employee may have to make certain amount of investment. Let's say, simple example, let's say Zomato delivery partner or Swiggy delivery partner. Now, if you want to work as a Swiggy delivery partner, don't you think you should have a bike? I hope you understand. You should have a bike. You're a software engineer. Don't you think you should have a computer? You are, let's say, you want to work as a Ola cab driver. You should have a car or an auto first. So there should be certain amount of investment that will come from the employee. Upskilling may not be provided by the company. Upskilling means better skill set. You have certain skill set, more skills will be provided so that you can move up. You can be moved, let's say, as a team leader. Now from team leader, you can become a regional manager. From a regional manager, you can become, let's say, senior manager, then the vice president or AVP before that, etc. So those skills that are required to move up like this, they will not be provided to gig workers. And companies cannot expect loyalty from the employee. It goes both the ways. It goes both the ways. Company doesn't expect loyalty from the employee, and employee also knows company doesn't have anything in my favor. That is, company will not protect my interest. If given a choice, they will remove me at any point of time. So there is no loyalty from either sides in the ecosystem like this. So these are some of the factors against the gig economy. Any issue here? Any issue? Please do let me know. Any problem related to what we have discussed in the context of employment? But at least they will pay you as a freelancer. Yes, they will pay you. Right? They will pay you. Again, payment is not a problem. Payment is never a problem here. Argument is company doesn't have a faith on the employee when they are gig workers. Because tomorrow, imagine you are the owner of a company. You have hired me in the sense as a contract worker, only for certain work. I'm a gig worker. I'm not bound to the company, right? Tomorrow, if I don't like working on a particular thing, I'll simply say, I don't want to give it to you. I don't want to work for you, right? So from day after tomorrow, you'll ensure that nothing will be allocated to me because I'm a gig worker. So that's what I'm saying. If you're a full-time worker, I hope you understand, if you're a full-time worker, you generally don't do it because you know that after 1 year, you're supposed to get increment. Appraisal is supposed to happen. After 1 year, you're due for promotion, etc., etc. So you're bound to the company. You have your own interest in your mind. Okay, so that is a basic idea of the gig economy. Shall I go to the next one now? Shall I go to the next concept? Okay, next one is inclusive growth. 2 more concepts are there, then we are done. We'll take up questions after that. And that's the end of Indian economy for you people. Okay, 2 more concepts are there. First one is inclusive growth. Idea of inclusive growth. If you look at the syllabus, this will be the last chapter that is actually mentioned in the syllabus. IMF is not even mentioned, but you should know about IMF. That's the reason I'm going to discuss IMF after this. Now, what is this idea of inclusive growth? Simple. Let me start with the definition here. Look at the bottom part of the slide. Look at the bottom part of the slide. Okay, what is inclusive growth? Inclusive growth refers to both the pace as well as pattern of the growth. I'll explain it. Have patience. So let's go point by point. Inclusive growth refers to both the pace as well as pattern of the growth, which are interlinked and must be addressed together. And this is a definition given by World Bank. World Bank says inclusive growth is both pace and pattern of the growth. So what is the meaning of it? Pace means simply GDP growth rate. Pace is referring to what? GDP growth rate. Right? Don't you think having a good growth rate is good for the Indian economy? Okay, so GDP growth rate, pace. What do you mean by pattern? What do you mean by pattern here? What is the impact of the GDP growth rate on the Indian economy, or I'll say Indian society? Understand this carefully. Right? What is inclusive growth? Right? Inclusive growth refers to the pace and pattern of the pace and pattern of growth. Pace and pattern means pace refers to the GDP growth rate of Indian economy, and pattern refers to what is the impact of this growth rate on the society. For example, if GDP increases, should the poverty come down or not? Let me know. If the GDP keeps on increasing for the Indian economy, should the poverty come down? Should death because of malnutrition, should the death because of malnutrition means low availability of nutrition, should the death of the children because of malnutrition come down? Of course, yes. Should regional disparities, should they come down? Yes. Should the income inequality come down? Of course, yes. So understand the logic here. Pace simply refers to at what speed GDP is growing. But equally important is, if there is a rise in the GDP, how is the society getting the benefit of this rise? For example, I'll show you a data, right? I'll just show you an example. Have a look at it. Imagine there are three people. Okay, just a simple example. Do not try to say, sir, taxation, this. Simple example. Imagine there are three people, A, B, and C. A is earning 0 rupees. B is earning, let's say, 200. C is earning 1000 rupees. And right, what is the total income? 1200 divided by 3, which is per capita is 400. Or else don't worry about it. Look at only GDP. GDP is how much? 1200 rupees. Now, if the GDP grows by 25%, if the GDP grows by 25%, let's say to 1500. By the way, it's a CSAT calculation. 25% means 1/4 of 1200, that's 300. So it has increased to 1500. So GDP growth rate of 25% has been achieved. This is the pace of the growth. Pace of the growth. If the GDP has increased, don't you expect the population also to get the benefit of rise in the GDP? But what if I say that A still earns 0, B is earning 50 rupees, and C is earning 1450 rupees. This is the new GDP. Now tell me, has the inequality increased or decreased? Has the inequality in the economy, has it increased or decreased? It has increased. Has the income inequality increased or decreased? It has increased. Will you call this as inclusive growth? Will you refer to this as inclusive growth? No, this is not inclusive growth. People are not getting the benefit of the growth. Right? People are not getting the benefit of growth. It is not 25%. How come? It should be 25%. It should be 25%. 25% basically is 1/4. 1/4 of 1200 is 300 rupees. From 1200 it has increased to 1500. So growth rate of 25%. I said growth rate of 25%. Okay. So is it inclusive growth? Absolutely no. It is not inclusive growth. I'll call this as exclusive growth. I'll call this as exclusive growth. That is, GDP has increased, but everybody has not got the benefit. Only few people in the economy are getting the benefit. Now, is it okay? Look at the previous slide now. Is it okay if I say that if I want to say we are achieving inclusive growth, along with the change in the GDP, the whole society should also get the benefit of the growth. I'll simply call this as development. Is it okay? I'll simply refer to this as development. So whenever you see that a country is achieving growth and there is also development in the society, I'll simply refer to this as inclusive growth. Is it okay? I'll simply refer to this as inclusive growth. Any difficulty, please do let me know. One definition I've given, more than sufficient. Even you don't have to by heart it, it's very simple. Inclusive growth refers to the pace and pattern of growth. Right? A pace as well as a pattern of growth, and both of them are interlinked. Both of them are connected to each other. Because if GDP is going to increase, we expect the development also to take place. Is it okay? If the GDP is going to increase, we expect, right, the growth, if the GDP is going to increase, we also expect the development to take place. That is basically the idea of inclusive growth. And have a look at the mind map I've given here. Whenever you talk about inclusive growth, what are you trying to achieve? What is the final outcome you expect to happen in an economy which is said to be having inclusive growth? For example, the pollution will be lower, right? And this is connected to pollution as well. Remember this. Pollution and inclusive growth both are connected. Environment, inclusive growth, both are connected. You should not say, sir, how they are connected. What is the issue here? My dear, if the pollution is very, very high, will it promote growth in the economy? How many of you think so? Let's see. Right? And there itself, I will come to know how many of you are actually reading the newspaper. Can I connect it to current affairs? One of the reasons why there are floods which are happening very recently is because of higher pollution. Anybody has a problem? One of the reasons why floods is happening in a recent time, for example, Pakistan floods. Is it okay? Floods in Pakistan. One of the reasons why there is higher incidences of the floods in case of the various countries is because of higher pollution. And I'll connect it to one more point. If there is a lot of pollution, temperature will go up. You tell me, will the temperature have an impact on the agriculture sector or not? Let me know. Will the temperature have an impact on agriculture sector or not? Of course, yes. Is there any current affairs example? Wheat. They are talking about wheat and connection with the temperature in India itself. So be very careful. So argument is, if there is lot of pollution, it will not lead to, let's say, inclusive growth. It might have an impact. It might actually lead to having an effect on the growth itself. And of course, yes, if temperature goes up, agriculture sector will suffer. 49% of labor is there in the agriculture sector. What will happen to poverty then? Poverty, of course, will start increasing. What about food security? Food security problems will also start arising. Right? So growth will also be affected. Development will also be affected. So protection of environment. Second, employment generation. We would want unemployment to come down, employment to keep on increasing. Because of course, one way to address poverty is to create employment. I hope you understand. One way you can address the issue of poverty, reduce poverty, is create a lot of jobs. If people get more and more jobs, automatically they will move out of poverty. Development in the agriculture sector, right? 49% labor is here only. Reduction in the poverty. Development of industries. Inclusion, that is financial inclusion. Regional inequalities, regional disparities should come down, and income inequalities should also come down. Any difficulty in understanding why I say that whenever you talk about inclusive growth, this is what you want to achieve? I hope you understand this. When you say you want to achieve inclusive growth, what do you want to actually achieve? What is your ultimate goal? You want to ensure farmers will not die by suicides. Agriculture sector will start performing very well. Farmers will earn better amount of revenues. Right? The income, right? There is a huge gap in the income. Very small number of people are earning lot of income. large number of people are earning very small amount of income in India, right, etc, etc, etc. So you want to address all of these issues, and if you can address all of these issues, you will automatically move towards achieving inclusive growth. Now you tell me, based on all these parameters, okay, you tell me, based on all these parameters, has India achieved inclusive growth? Let me see. Right, based on looking at all these parameters, everything is there right in front of your eyes. You do not have to look left, right, etc. Everything is there right in front of your eyes. Do you think India has achieved inclusive growth? Answer is no. We introduced the concept of inclusive growth in the 11th 5-year plan, even in the 12th 5-year plan. But we are yet to achieve inclusive growth. And let me prove it. Let me prove it to you. Right, let me show you one data here. Please have a look at the data. Right, please have a look at the data. Please do not by heart it, because by the time you write the exam, there will be one more report, multiple reports like this, which will show you income inequality, wealth inequality, etc, etc. Now have a look at this. As per World Inequality Report, as per World Inequality Report, right, in case of India, if you basically find out how much of the income is earned by top 1% of population, how much of the income is earned by bottom 50% of the population, you will realize that only 13.1% of the total incomes in India are earned by bottom 50%, and 21.7% of the total incomes are earned by top 1% of the population. Is it okay? Top 1% of the population. What do you mean by top 1% of the population? Let me give a very basic idea here. Let me give you very, very basic idea. Imagine there are 4 people, A, B, C, D. A, B, C, D. A is earning 100 rupee, B is earning 200, C is earning 300, D is earning 400. Total income of this country is how much? Total income of this country is 1000 rupees. Now if I arrange them in descending order of their incomes, it will be this sequence: D, C, B, A. In descending order, if I arrange them, right, the top will be D and the last will be A. Now have a look at this. 4 people are there. Can I say that top 25% of the population is earning 40% of the income? Let me know. I'll repeat it again. Top 25% of the population, is earning 40% of income. Any difficulty? Either say yes or no. I'm using CSAT here. Either say yes or no. It should be either clear or unclear. You cannot simply sit quiet now. Silence is no more an option. No. Right? It's not clear. My dear, 4 people are there. 4 people are there. One person will account for 25% of population. And I hope you at least understand this. 4 people are there. One person, every one of them is equal to 25% of population. I'm saying 25% of the top population is earning 40% of the income. Apply the same logic here. Apply the same logic. Top 1% of the population is earning how much? 21.7% of incomes. And bottom 50% of the population is earning 13% of the incomes. I hope you understand. 13%. Bottom 50% population earns 13, and top 1% earns 21.7% of the income. Is it not huge gap in the income? Don't you think there is a huge income inequality that you can observe here? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. And look at the another important point mentioned in the same report, World Inequality Report. Only around 18% of the total incomes earned. Only around 18% of the total incomes earned in India is earned by women. What does it mean? More than, or let's say around 82% of the total income that is earned actually go to men. right? And now this is a basic problem. Wealth inequality is there. Income inequality is there. Gender inequality is there. Right? And now you tell me, looking at this data, have we achieved inclusive growth? Absolutely no. We are still far away from achieving inclusive growth. We need to ensure these kind of issues, and this is an issue, do not have any doubt. Income inequality is a big problem, because if the GDP increases, what if rich people will keep on earning more and more income, poor people will remain poor? Do you want that situation to happen in the Indian economy? Of course no. So we want to ensure there is inclusive growth. And by the way, India has not achieved inclusive growth. We are moving towards that. It doesn't mean that we have not done anything. I'll tell you. It doesn't mean that government is not doing anything. Government is implementing a lot of reforms. I'll tell you the list of reforms. Has India achieved inclusive growth? No, we are yet to achieve. We are moving towards inclusive growth. One, population which lives in poverty is very, very high. India houses one of the largest population which lives in poverty. India houses one of the largest population. This is not me saying it. World Bank says it. India has one of the largest population which lives in poverty. Second, unemployment as well as underemployment problem is still existing in India. Third, there is a huge income as well as regional disparities. Fourth, right, regional imbalances are existing, basically extension of the third point itself. Fifth one, industrial growth is contributing to a lot of pollution. We are one of the largest pollutants in the international market. One of the largest pollutants, right? Biggest polluters in the international market. Generally, the ranking will be India will be the third or the fourth largest polluter in the market. Right? So, based on this, we can simply say no, we are yet to achieve inclusive growth, but we are moving towards a concept of inclusive growth. But now the question arises, why? What is the reason? Why should we achieve inclusive growth? One, India has the second largest population in India. Don't you want to take care of all of the people in India? Simple, right? We have the second largest, and as per various expectations or let's say estimates, we could have already become the largest as well. But don't worry, either second largest or the largest. Fact is, population in India is very, very high. Now, can you leave out some of the people out of the growth? Can you simply keep on focusing on the growth, 10% growth rate, $5 trillion economy, etc., and ignore the people, ignore the poor people? Of course, no, you can't do that, right? You can't do that. Then basically, you will have a system wherein you basically divide everything into haves and have-nots, right? People who are rich, people who are poor, right? You will end up having that. So India is the second largest population. So you need to ensure that everybody in the economy, everybody in the society will get the benefit of growth, not few people. Second, India is also suffering from lot of poor performance, a lot of poor performance or very low performance in some of the social indicators. For example, corruption is very high in India. Again, rather than some of you say, no sir, you are wrong, corruption has come down. Then right, corruption is there in India. Okay, right? Poverty, very, very high. Literacy rate is a problem. Sanitation problems are there. Access to nutrition is a problem. Again, whatever is your viewpoint, don't worry. Don't worry. You might be supporting that party, this party. Fact is simple. Are there children who do not get access to sufficient food grains in India? Answer is yes. Is literacy a problem in India? Again, the answer is yes. Is there corruption in India? Yes. Right? These are problems. Again, if you want to achieve inclusive growth, these will not let you achieve. They will hold you back. They will simply hold you back, not let you achieve the inclusive growth. Third one, what about economic indicators? We have taken care of social indicators. What about economic indicators? And by the way, can you write population growth? Can you write population growth as a problem here? Let me know. Is it a problem? Of course, yes. Please write it. I have not written, but you don't make that mistake. You write population growth is a problem. Why? Higher the growth in the population, which means number of people dependent on government will increase. Number of people who are supposed to be provided with food grains will increase. And that's a huge burden on the government. I hope you understand. That's a very, very huge burden on the government. That's a reason I'll tell you a very interesting concept here. Have a look at this. There is a term called as a demographic dividend. Right? I'm pretty sure all of you heard of it. There's a term called as demographic dividend. What do you mean by demographic dividend? The extra growth that you can achieve by having certain type of population. Is that okay? What is this idea for demographic dividend? The kind of a growth you can achieve because you have certain type of population. Sir, what do you mean by that? I'll ask you a very simple question. Focus now. Imagine there are two countries, A and B. And in both the countries, 100 workers are there. 100 workers. In country B, I'll take extreme examples so that you understand. In country B, all the 100 workers are in the age group of 20 to 35 years. Basically, youth population. In country A, all the 100 people, again, I know it's an extreme example. All the people are 58 years old. Now, in both the countries, same population is there, 100 people. But tell me which country has the potential to achieve higher growth rate? Let me see. Which country has the potential to achieve higher growth rate? Again, I'm using potential because all of you know this by now. Investment is important. Skilled labor is important. Right? Let's say the government policies are important. Technology is important. All of the factors are there. But based on only this fact, based on only this one, don't you think country B has more potential to achieve better growth rate compared to B? That is basically the demographic dividend. That is the returns that you can harness, returns that you can earn because of this population distribution. Now, India has a huge number of people in the working age group. All of you will agree? India has a huge number of people who are there in the working age group. Now, whether the economy is able to use this or not, that's a different matter altogether. But don't you think go down in the lane by 30 years, 20 years, 25 years, the population which was 30 years today would become 60 years after 30 years. And if this 30-year population is not employed, they do not have any pension plan, they are not getting any income right now. Simple question, the burden of the government after 30 years, will it not increase? Just think of it. Will the burden of the government after 30 years, will it increase or not? Right, sir, how the burden will increase? My dear, right, I'll take extreme examples. Understand this. Extreme examples so that you quickly know that. If nobody is working in India and everybody is above the age of 60 years, don't you think it is the duty of the government to provide food grains to all of them? Duty. Don't you think it is the obligation of the government to provide health care to the people? Obligation of the government to provide subsidy to this population. Obligation of the government to provide housing for the population. Yes or no? Just let me know. Yes or no? So the argument is, today whatever demography you have, if you do not use it and achieve good growth rates, trust me, after 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, same demography will become your burden. Same people will become a burden. Burden in the sense government will not have any option but to keep on providing assistance to them because it is an old age population. So demographic dividend can turn out to become demographic disaster. And UPSC can ask you a question like this. Demographic dividend, if not used well now, can become a demographic disaster later. Understood the question here? Right? That's the reason I'm saying population growth is also a problem for India. India is also suffering from unsatisfactory growth indicators. For example, last couple of years, GDP growth rate, industrial growth rate, right, etc. But again, please understand, it's not perpetual. That is, it's not that last 2 decades growth has always been bad. No, in the last couple of years, it has been a concern. And although there is a higher GDP growth rate, right, the benefits of fruits means the benefits of it is not reaching to everybody. Rich people are earning more income. Poor people are earning very less amount of income. This is basically exclusive growth, not inclusive growth. That is, the benefits are going more and more to only small section of the society, not to everyone. Okay, so these are some of the reasons why we should promote inclusive growth. Any difficulty here? Let me know. Any difficulty so far? And just to prove that India is not achieving inclusive growth or there is issue related to inclusive growth, I've given the table here. I've given graph here. Glance. Just to look at it. Next year, maybe in economic survey, maybe in some other government document, or some other survey will be conducted. You will get updated info. Okay, let's take a break then. Pace and pattern simply means the growth rate in the GDP and what is the benefit to the people from the growth. Okay, done. So let's take a break now, right? Then we will take up issues related to inclusive growth. So then why would not we adopt capitalism? My dear, please go back to the first lecture. We have discussed this. Please go back to the first lecture. Why are we not adopting capitalism? If you adopt capitalism, whatever inequality is there, it will further increase. At least now, government is providing certain assistance. In capitalism, government role is very minimal. Everything is done by the private sector. Do you think capitalism is the best model in a country where there is already high income inequality? Absolutely no. That would be a wrong approach. Okay, done. So let's take a break now. I'll start at 6:10. Last break for you people. Then right after 6:10 we'll restart. 8 o'clock, final break to all of you. Right, final break from the Indian economy for all of you. Done then. Take a break. Take a break. I'll start at 6:10. Okay.